Howdy folks, I want to do a little different video than what I've done in the past. This is kind of a project that can be used in multiple different ways, but I'm going to make a shot pouch slash, could be called a purse depending on your use, but it'd be like a shot pouch or possibles bag that's kind of gets the idea of the design from like 18th century stuff, but I'm going to be using some stuff that was more like invented in the 19th century. The style will be like 18th century, but like the closure is going to be 19th century. So it's kind of my own thing. All the stuff, the way it'll look is stuff that could have been around like in the cap and ball revolver era, but not necessarily like Revolution. So it's kind of historically accurate, kind of my own thing. So anyway, first you got to have a pattern, and this is going to be an envelope style. This is for something similar. This is for a handbag that I sell in my wife's shop. So the first thing you're going to want to do is have a piece of paper. That's what I got here is pallet sheeting material. And I made sure on one edge that I had a square edge. And I want this to be 9 inches this way, 7 inches this way. So to get your 9 inches, I measured 4.5 from the edge in, here, made a line with my, this is part of a drywall T-square that I glued sandpaper to the back so it has grip on the leather and on the paper. Made my line, folded that in half. So that's how I got to that point. Okay, with this folded in half, I'm gonna trace right along. Now, just take a utility knife, very carefully cut right on that line. Get rid of that. Okay, now got that out. So this is going to be the top edge because it's not the even edge. This is the bottom because it'll be even. Now we need to measure from the bottom up 7 inches. And make a mark. Then on the other side. Helps if you have your thing facing the right way. Okay. So you measure that. Connect your dots. And you make your line. Now we're going to fold that over. Go this way. Fold it over right on that line. Okay. Now we're going to fold the flap. Being careful to keep this as even as we can on the edges. And we're going to fold the flap over, keeping it even again. So fold straight across, make sure we're even on both sides. So there's your basic envelope. Now, fold this in half again. And we are going to square off the top. This way. Now we're just going to take, as it's folded, we're going to take our straight edge and we are going to just cut the corner here. So that's what our flap is going to look like. Nothing too precise, just so they're pretty even on both sides. And that lines up pretty good. So we got that. Now we're going to fold this like this. And again, we're just going to cut off the corner. Make sure we're even as we can be. And there is our pattern. That's all there is to it. Now we'll get a piece of leather and get this down on leather and get it put together and make a strap for it. Okay, so after I turned the camera off, I remembered I wanted to mark for my straps, which I'm going to attach on the back. So I just folded it in half, eyeballed, made a couple marks. That way they're the same distance from one end to the other. And then on the inside, I just folded that in half. Took just a regular pair of scissors and just cut along there just to make a little bit of a indentation or whatever. It just helps you get your hand in and out better. And also the piece of leather I had, this wasn't quite going to fit in the spot I wanted it, and doing that made it fit. So it's a nice thing about making your own patterns. You can modify it for how big your piece of leather is. So the leather I'm going to be using today is right here. This is part of a, I believe it's Water Buffalo from Springfield Leather Company. It's part of a odd lot of oil tan size. This one's a little lighter brown than most of them I get from there. Really good bang for your buck with these sides. You can get them different sizes, whether it's, I don't remember what the sizes are, 12 to 15 feet for X amount of dollars, and however many square feet, and you pay more money, you get more square feet. And I've ordered several of them, made a lot of things, sold a lot of things. They're really good quality. So I've already got this, used this to trace around everything. I already stropped my round knife, so we'll get it cut out. If I didn't mention, this is probably like a 4 to 5 ounce thickness. Water Buffalo usually, it's not as stiff as cow, so a lot of times I'll have to go through and go over where I already cut and just get the last of the fibers. But I'll get the rest of this cut out off camera so don't bore you to death, and then we'll go from there. One other thing I forgot to mention before I finish cutting this, when you're doing this area in the middle here, you want to make sure that you always cut away from your project and away from your fingers. Whether you're using just a utility knife or a round knife, whatever kind of knife you're using, you could use a scissors. No matter what you're using, you want to make sure you're cutting away. So like if I'm using a round knife, I want that cut facing away from me. And I'm going to start in the middle. Get that where you can kind of see it. I'm going to start in the middle of that point, and I'm going to go out like this. And then I would turn this and then cut the other one. So you move your leather around, or if you got a table set up, or maybe you're cutting on a cutting board on the floor, move yourself, you move around it, whatever, so you're not cutting towards your project, cut towards your scrap. But, I mean, you want to save your scrap too, but if you hit your scrap, it's like, oh man, I lost some scrap. Where if you hit your project, it's like, okay, I just ruined my work, my fun, and I'm not going to have a good day after that. So Always try to do your best to just take it slow and easy, cut away from your project, and move your project so you're having optimal cutting strength and optimal no waste, I guess I'd say. So that's just a couple other tips. Finish the rest of this off camera and then we'll get it marked for stitching. Okay, now we're going to be marking for our chisel holes. I also made two parts of the strap. This is going to go on the back side, and then the strap will either be sewn or laced to that. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but we'll get there. So I just cut those two out and then used a round end punch on one end. These are about 6 inches long. So yeah, those will just go on the back to attach the strap to. You'll sew them, or we'll sew them with the outside facing. It'll be sewn face to face with the outside facing out, so when you're wearing it, the smooth part is facing out towards somebody. We need one more part, and when I use the little button closure, I'm going to sew a piece of leather to here, and then the button will be down here, and then that will be what attaches. So I'm going to take my wooden strap cutter here. This is set for 1 inch, and this is a piece of thicker chrome tan water buffalo from a different height. So I will square up one end of that and round off the other one for the closure, so we'll have to do that. I'll have to mark that for chisel holes, but start with, and take this as a edge groover. They make different styles. I prefer this style. These are really hard to find, this style. This came in a kit off of Amazon. I don't remember the brand, and I don't know, I don't think they make them anymore. It was a good kit. It actually had some decent tools that actually lasted a little while. Had a couple other kits that wasn't all that impressed with, so cheap kits off of Amazon, I don't know if they're the way to go or not, but they get you can figure out what you need from them, I guess. You get what you think is useful, and then you can go from there, figuring out what you actually need. Okay, now I'm going to lay my pattern on here. I'm just going to take my awl. I'm going to mark where our crease is for our flat. I'm just going to poke a little hole through the pattern right on that crease into the leather, and that marks where I need to stop that groove line. And I'm just going to poke through our holes, marking our area where we're going to attach that strap. Sometimes you got to go in afterwards and just poke them again, make sure that they're visible so you don't mess up. I don't know if the camera will pick that up or not. Not really, but I can see them. So I'm going to flip just like this, and I'm going to groove that side. I'll just go to that mark. So I'm going to do that on both sides. And on these little straps, I'm just going to make a groove line. And I'll set this a little wider, and I'll make another groove line. And I'll do that with the part that I'm going to sew on the front for the closure as well. I'll have, that'll be sewed on with two lines. So I will mark the other side of this, and then we'll hammer out our stitch line and stitch it up and figure out how we want to attach the strap. Okay, now we're at my punch table, Got a little piece of scrap here from the thicker straps. I'm going to take a 1/2 inch hole punch. We'll need that later when we're installing our little button to use kind of as a washer. So we'll just set that to the side for now. And then we gotta put in a chisel line on all of our other parts. It's a 4-prong. This is just a flat chisel I got off of Amazon, so I'm just chiseling holes. I'll do that. I'm just putting this right in the center, just eyeballing it. I'll do that with the keeper as well. Now we're going to take the main body, and I'm going to chisel all the way along that groove line. So from here to here on both sides. I'm going to use a 6-prong chisel for that. So 2 just to get around that corner. So we got that side done. So you're just gonna have your chisel line. So I'll finish that off camera, and then we'll go from there. Where I've got this marked for my straps, I'm just gonna lay my strap in, get it lined up as good as I can with where it's marked. And I'm just, ow, poke my finger. Just going to take an awl, and I'm just going to make a mark right through all those chisel holes. And then I can just take a chisel, drop it right in those holes. And that's going to line up just perfect. So I'll do that to the other side and finish this side, and then we'll come back. Alright, got all the chiseling done. First thing you got to sew in is your straps. So this is the part that I'm going to attach the actual strap to, but this just to keep it smaller so it's easier to do the rest. So I already got my chisel holes done here, so I'm going to lay that in. I'm going to go in on the second hole and go in. Just go in part way with my needle through both holes, and I'm going to go through part way with my other needle on the first hole, and I'm going to come back with the first needle, pull them both through, make an X. And then I'm just going to stitch that line. I'm going to go back into the hole I started in. That way I've backstitched one hole. That gives it extra strength. I'm going to do that. Do this on a stitching pony too, but for 4 stitches, it's easier to just do it with 1 needle at a time method. You put 1 needle in, pull it tight, and away from where you're going, grab the other needle right on top of that thread and back through the hole. Okay, got that done. Now we're going to go back in 1 hole with 1 needle, and we're just going to tie a square knot on the inside of the pouch. Cut that off. I keep a lighter in my shop. Just burn the end. So that's what that looks like. And then when this is done and the strap's on it, then you'll see the top grain of that strap. So I'll attach the other one, and then we'll stitch the rest of it together. Okay, now we're ready to stitch the main body. So I got, if you can really see that, I got an arm's length of thread. I got John James harness needles. I think these are the middle size. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. I'm at 5 on both sides. Make sure my corners are lined up pretty good, which they are. So I'm going to come in with 1 needle, come all the way through. I'm going to go back towards the bottom, make my X, pull that tight, now that I've gotten to the end, then I'm going to just back stitch till I get up here. I could probably stitch a side in about 5-10 minutes, somewhere in there, but I think I'll still finish it off camera just so the video doesn't get really long just watching me stitch. But yeah, I can do a couple inches a minute. It's a project like this, only going through 2 block plies. It's really not bad hand stitching. Obviously a machine would be a little faster, but those are a lot of money and they take up a lot of space, and my shop's already kind of crowded, and if I screw up something with these, I can fix it every time. You screw up something with a sewing machine, and I don't know if I can fix a sewing machine, so I'm going to just stick to hand stitching for now. Anyway, I'll finish this up and we'll pick up how I end the thread. Okay, so I've sewed to the end. Got thread hanging on both sides, and that took me probably less than 5 minutes. So I'm going to go back to the second hole. I'm going to back stitch usually about 3 or 4 holes to just kind of whatever I feel like at the time. Sometimes you get your strap looped around in that thread, and that can be a little aggravating, but it's not as aggravating as if you would have put an entire long strap on there and had to contend with that through this entire thing. Anyway, back stitch a few holes. Careful not to loop your thread around that strap part. Okay, so I've gone back 3. I'm going to go back up to the top, which can be a little difficult sometimes, because now you've already got 2 stitchings worth of thread through there. Sorry about jiggling the camera. I had to put it resting against my table to get a good enough view of kind of what I'm doing here. up second one from the top. I'm going to just bring a needle in part way. I'm going to take my other side and come through. I'm going to pull both of them through. This is Chuck Dorset on Weaver Leather Supply is where I learned this trick. Making a knot on the inside there. He didn't backstitch when he was doing it, but I find that that knot doesn't always stay with wax thread. If you backstitch it, then it doesn't have any pressure. And I do, forget the technical term for that knot. I call it a double square knot, but basically do another overhand knot over your square knot just to make sure. Cut it off, leave a little bit of a tail. Fold it back, point this down so you're away from the face of your leather, and burn the ends. I always, after I blow it out, kind of smush it down with my fingers. And that half is done. So all together, maybe 7 or 8 minutes to stitch that side. So really not that bad. So now we'll get the other side stitched up and attach our closer, figure out what we're going to do for straps, and we'll be done. Okay, got it all stitched up. I measured across my top here, which came out to 6 inches. And I laid my ruler from corner to corner here, exactly 6 inches. I laid my flap from my keeper in, and I laid that right over the 3 between 2.5 and 3.5, so I'd be right in the center. And I marked spots with my awl and then chiseled them. So I'll get that stitched on next, and then we'll install the button keeper. Okay, I got my closure sewed on. I've got a 1/4 inch hole punch here, so I'm going to go somewhere in the center, right about there. I'm going to punch a hole. I'm just going to eyeball it. Looks good. Okay. Now we're going to take a utility knife. And we're just going to make a tiny slit on top of that. Another one. So you don't want much of a slit, but just a little bit of a slit, and that's so these little buttons will fit through it. So what I'm going to do, put the button right in there. That'll work just fine. Take the button out. So now I'm going to fold this flat, line up my sides so they look even, and then I'm going to take my awl and go right in the center of that hole. Just make a little mark. Don't want to poke too far when you got it folded over so you don't go through the back side. Now to punch that hole, what you can do, if your bag's big enough, you can just stick your poly board on the inside so you can punch that hole. Otherwise, I keep these little blocks of wood. They end up getting all chopped to pieces, but those work really good when you got to punch a hole inside of a bag or something. So now, find so this is the screw that holds that little stud button. I don't know if you can really see that, but anyway, that's the screw. So we need a smaller hole punch. Punch that out. Okay, now into this little circle that we punched out earlier, punch a hole in the center of that. Okay. Now like to do, it's another Chuck Dorset from Weaver Leathercraft thing. Take a little bit of Leathercraft cement and just put just a drop in the end of any Chicago screws or studs or anything like this that I do. I do just a drop of this. Now I'm going to put the screw into that little leather washer. I'm going to poke it up through the hole here. Place this on top. So I got that started. I just take my little screwdriver, get in there, hold on to the stud, and tighten it all the way down. Okay. There. Other than finishing off the straps, this is done. So we'll get them attached and we'll be done. Okay, I got my strap all sewed up here. That's the style I'm doing. You're going to want this style of edger instead of this style to go around the edge, unless you're way better than I am. I can't make these kind work with that. So you want this style here. But I just made a little groove line around there after I made the strap and used my round end punch and just glued it and did the back. This one's glued up. You got to rough up that smooth side a little bit. The buckle side is a little thicker leather from a different side, and the billet side is the same as what I made the actual bag out of. So now I'm just going to take my 2-prong chisel, and I'm going to start on the tops on both sides, and I'm just going to keep switching back and forth, first time, last hole, until I get to the middle. If you start here and go all the way around, you may end up kind of wonky. And sometimes you even need to do a 1-prong chisel and just split the difference where they meet up. So I'll finish doing that off camera because you can't really see from the angle here anyway, and then I'll show you the finished project. Okay, so it's all finished up. I got my buckle attached with 2 Chicago screws. Got glue in there, of course, to keep them in. I used a slot punch and punched out from my belt keeper. Got these stitched up and glued, both sides. Got a thicker strap for that. Got a thicker strap for my keeper, which is pretty secure. You can put like I got birdshot in here for my Traditions Kentucky pistol. Got round balls in that, caps. I always keep earplugs in my pouches. Got some wadding. Keep a nipple wrench, or not nipple wrench, nipple pick. It's a CVA, doesn't really matter, but anyway, all that stuff fits in there. Like I said, it's a 7x9, 9 wide, 7 high, and there is plenty of room for anything I need to carry for my gun. And it's not 100% like 18th century historically accurate, but I think it's pretty historically accurate for 19th century, like in the cap lock or cap and ball era. You know, if you're carrying something like this, to make it 18th century historically accurate, I think about all you'd have to do is have a wooden or a bone button here rather than this button stud. I know these were around by the Civil War, so definitely in the percussion era that would have been around. The bag itself is more 18th century looking, but I don't know, I kind of like it. It looks rustic but still somewhat professional, and so that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.